So yeah, this is the next video. This video is the continuation of the previous one, but actually we're going to discuss different topic. So we still have the same circular graphic here, okay? In this video, we're going to talk about, as you asked me on the YouTube video there, how to loop multiple objects that have different speed, different motion, different looping duration, how to make these objects to loop at the same time at the end of the video, okay? And I bet this is indeed a very problematic case, because you will eventually meet this problem numerous times in your company, right? Because your company is designing logos and logos are supposed to loop. So this problem will emerge numerous times, and I believe this is indeed a very important problem to solve. So yeah, let's get to the problem, right? So the key problem is that we have multiple objects. We have multiple animated objects, okay? Each with their own looping, each with their own speed, motion, looping duration, whatever. And yet, at the end of the video, we still want them to loop at the same time, so that when the video ends, once it is rendered, when the video ends and plays back to the beginning again, there will be a seamless loop. Okay, so for example here, we still have this circular object, right, from the previous video. So let's call this the first element. So this is the first element. The circular shape is the first element. Now let's bring in the second element. This coffee that we have already done, this coffee logo, right? So this is the second element. And let's scale this down just to match. Just a little bit. Oh, scale it down even more. I don't know. Something like that maybe. All right. Good. Let's see if it plays back smoothly. Oh, there's a slight clipping there. There. The yellow circle is clipped, so we have to increase the composition height. And don't worry, Mike, this is not actually the method to solve the problem itself. This is just to make the asset files appear beautifully. Okay. So there we go, there's no clipping. Okay, now we have two elements here, right? So we have the coffee logo. The second element is the coffee logo, and the first element is the circular shape. And each have their own looping, each have their own animation, duration, speed. Okay, as you can see here. And now we want to loop them. So obviously we're going to use the loop out expression, right? Yes, let's enable time remapping for this. Time remapping. And let's do this. Go here, yeah, and let's delete this one. Okay. So there you go, Mike. If you have a pre-composition, if you have an animation inside a comp, and then that comp is imported into another comp like this, which means it's a pre-comp, and if you want to loop the entire animation there, then you have to use time remapping, obviously, right? Like this. Whereas this one, the shape here, the layer itself, is not residing in another composition, so it's still on the same composition here. So we can just use the usual keyframe here, the original keyframes. So obviously we want to make them loop. So now let's apply the loop out. The loop out expression, okay? And there you go. So on the time remapping property here, we apply the loop out expression because it is obviously a pre-comp, okay? But at this one, we are using the rotation property, the keyframe here, to apply the loop out expression into. All right. So these objects are now looping, but are they looping at the same time? If, for example, we set their animation end at, I don't know, 3:15 maybe, just to illustrate the point. For example, this is the end of the video, Mike, okay? So this is the end of the video. For example, just as an example, you render that as 3 second 15 frames. So let's play it back and see if they are looping seamlessly. There you go. Oh, there you go. You can see that. There's the jarring or glitch, right? See that? There. Yep, you can see that already. So each object has their own motion, looping duration, speed, and yet at the end of the video, they don't loop at the same time. So that is quite a problem, right? So how do we make these objects to loop at the same time at the end of the video? Multiple objects actually, not just two. But for simplicity's sake, we just use two objects here for illustrating sake, ease of education. So to solve this problem, it's actually very simple, Mike. Rather simple, not very, but rather simple. So if you remember, in elementary school, we have this mathematical formula or mathematical principle called, in Indonesia, in the Indonesia elementary school, it is called KPK, or kelipatan persekutuan terkecil. But in the United States, I believe it's called lowest common multiple. Yeah, I think it's lowest common multiple, or LCM. So using that mathematical principle, we can solve this problem. LCM essentially helps you find when will two numbers end at the same multiple, at the minimum possible same multiple where they can meet at the same time. For example, you have two light bulbs, right? One light bulb is flashing at 3 seconds and the other light bulb is at 5 seconds. So how can these two light bulbs flash at the same time? Well, then we have to use the LCM. That is the... I remember that from the elementary school, that problem about light bulb. So using that principle, for example, here, Mike, we have two objects, two elements. One is a circle and the other is a coffee logo. Each have their own duration, right? So how can we make these two durations to meet at the same time? Well, let's see here. The first element, the circular element, has the duration, which means the looping duration. The looping duration is 60 frames, right? 60 frames. We are using frames here. We don't use time code because it's too confusing to calculate. We use frames here just to illustrate the point better. There you go. 60 frames, right? That is the first element, the circular element. Now, the second element, which is the coffee logo, is 83 frames, right? So we have two durations there. The first element is 60 frames, and the second element is 83 frames. Okay, so let's just write it out to make it more clearly. First is 60. So this is the first element, right? 60 frames. And the second element is 83. Is it 83? Yep, it is 83. Okay, so there you go, Mike. So we have two durations here, 60 frames and 83 frames. The duration of the looping, as you can see here, the duration of the looping, right? So now we have to find the LCM. LCM of 60 and 83. Okay. LCM, there you go. So what is the LCM of 60 and 83? Well, you can calculate the LCM manually using the prime factorization method, which is usually taught in elementary school, but that would be too tedious, too long, and I don't recommend that. In fact, because obviously we are dealing with large numbers here, Not to mention if you're using looping animation, which has hundreds of frames, it'll be very large and you're not going to be able to calculate that manually. It's very long, very tedious. So online, on the web, on the internet, we have this neat calculator, LCM calculator called, this is the website, alcuna.com, calculators LCM. So using this website, we can calculate the LCM of multiple numbers, not just two numbers, but any numbers. Okay, if you want to find this website, I will write this link on the process tree checklist, don't worry. So for example, as we can see here, we have two numbers, 60 and 83. All right, separated by comma, 83, 60 and 83, two numbers. Actually, you can have multiple numbers, not just two. You can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. And then we calculate the LCM. Is it 83? 60 and 83, yeah, it is 83, 60 and 83. So let's just calculate the LCM. The LCM is 4,980. Okay, so this should be the end of the video. This number here, the LCM, should be the end of the video, for example here. Because now we know that the LCM is that large, now we have to go to composition settings, go to duration, and input the LCM number there, 4,980 frames. There you go, Mike. Which translates into 1 minute and 23 or 23 seconds. So the video duration is 1 minute and 23 seconds. That means the video has to play back at this time here. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a little bit confusing. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit rambling. Yep. So the video duration, Mike, the entire video duration should be 4,980 frames. As you can see on the composition settings here, 4,980 frames. So that those multiple objects can loop at the same time seamlessly. Okay? There you go. So what we need to do right now is just to increase this duration right there. Right there. So there you go, Mike. Okay? Maybe this one too if you need, but actually it's not necessary. Just write, what is it, 4,000? 4,980, yep. Okay, there you go. All right. So now when we play back the video, it will make a perfect seamless loop at the end of the video. Obviously, we are not going to wait 1 minute, or if you want, I can make that too, but let's just see the end of the video here. Let's just render it out and see if it's looped perfectly. All right, that's enough, I guess. There you go, Mike. So let's play out from this frame here and see if it loops perfectly at the end when it goes back to the first frame of the video. Here, you see the playhead here, there, if you don't notice that. So let's play it back and see if the CTR reaches here and goes back into the first frame here. We must see whether there is a glitch or a snapping change, or whether it's a seamless looping. So let's play it back. See the, there you go. Look at this. Focus on this, okay? There you go. Let's see whether it's looping perfectly or not. Yep. Look at this. The playhead already reaches here, and yet you don't see any jarring or snapping change there. Perfect, isn't it? Once again, look at that, Mike. Now the playhead is about to reach the end. Yep. Perfect seamless loop. Once again, I'm not quite sure. Let's see. Yep. Once again. Just focus on the COM panel there, on the logo. You don't need to see the playhead. There you go. Once again. Yep, Mike. It's a perfect seamless loop there. So there you go. If you want to see it, render it out to see the whole in full video. Oh, it takes too long. Just to render takes too long. What happens here? Resolution set to full, but these are just simple shapes, right? So why is it switching to foreground? Oh, we have to purge it. When the run preview says switching to foreground, it means it's not utilizing the multi-processing capability of After Effects. So let's see. There you go, multi-MP, oh, but it still takes long, right? We're not going to wait that long. I'm sorry. But you get the point, Mike. So this object will loop. It has its own looping. But they will loop at the same time at frame 4980 frames. You might be confused because this here states 4979, right? But that is just because in After Effects the frame is counted from frame 0 here. So 0 is already counted as one frame. That is why we have apparently one frame less here, although in fact it's actually 4980 frames. Okay, there you go. So there you have it, Mike. The key here is using the LCM, calculate the duration. Okay, so first of all you have to calculate the duration of the looping. Okay, each element has its own looping, and this looping has its own duration. So for example, the shape here, the circle shape, it has the duration of the looping at 60 frames, 1 second, right? And the second one is 83 frames. The coffee logo is 83 frames. So from these two durations, we have to calculate the LCM. All right. Oh yes, when calculating the duration, you should not calculate it one frame back from the last frame, which means you should disregard the second principle. Okay? Because we are using the loop out expression here. This loop out here, loop out expression. The loop out expression has a quirk, has its own quirk. So when it reaches here, I don't know if it's really explainable or not. So the loop out expression, for example here, the loop out cycle, whenever the frame reaches here, one frame after the last frame, it is not actually this frame here. It is actually the second frame here. So when you cut back one frame, for example, when you cut back here, which means the keyframe is right here at the CTI, one frame backward, then there will be one frame being skipped. So that is just one quirk of the loop out expression. So when you're using the loop out expression, you must disregard the looping principle number 2. Okay, you must use the full frame of your entire looping animation. In this case, we have 60. So for example, on the coffee logo here, on the coffee logo, previously we have this, right? The last frame is 83 frames. 1 second, 23 frames, right? But then we cut it back one frame to make for a seamless loop when we render this video here as a single loop here, okay? When the work area bar is right here. But when we are using the loop out expression here on the loop out expression, we don't want to cut back one frame right here. We want to use the full 83 frames here. 83 frames, okay? On the time remap value is 83 frames. We want to use that. So that's it, Mike. When you're using the loop out expression, when you're using the loop out expression, you should disregard principle number 2, which means your element should loop at its full frames. You should not cut back one frame. Okay? So that's it. What was it that I was about to explain? Is it? Yep. Oh yeah, of course. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think that's all, Mike. You have multiple elements and you want to loop it at the same time. And you're using either the actual rotation property or the actual keyframed property that have already been keyframed. The property that already keyframed, and then you apply loop out on it. Or you're using the time remapping feature of After Effects. This is the time remapping is essential if you're using a pre-comp. So here, as you can see, this animation is pre-comped, and then if you want to loop it, obviously you'll have to use the time remap and then apply the loop out expression on the time remap property. All right. But if it's not a pre-comp, if it's just a normal layer like this, then you can just plug in the loop out expression on the keyframed property there. In this case, the rotation property, right? So that's it, Mike. To sum it up, once again, because this is indeed very important, to sum it up, when you have multiple objects, when you have multiple elements on the scene that has its own looping, its own duration, its own speed, and you want them all to loop at the same time at the end of the video, you have to use the mathematical principle called lowest common multiple, or LCM here. Okay, so you find the first element's duration in frames, okay, and then you find the second element's duration in frames, and then you calculate the LCM of these two or multiple numbers, not just two, but can be multiple numbers. You calculate the LCM using this website here. Maybe next time I'm going to create the algorithm for this, finding the LCM, so that you don't have to go to the website. But for now, I think it's too long-winded for the algorithm to be written here. But that's it, Mike. Oh, and once also, what if? Oh yes, what if? What if? So there's another scenario here. What if the animation, for example here, the coffee animation, what if the coffee animation doesn't play back at its supposed first frame, right? What if it plays back right here, right? What if it plays back right here? Well, that's quite a problem, right? So for example, you have multiple people, multiple person doing the same animation, and one person, one animator, decides that this coffee logo should be moved back right here for whatever reason, and yet the logo must still be looping at the same time at the end of the video. How do you do that? Well, I believe it's the same thing. I mean, there's no difference there. Essentially, we just find the duration of the entire looping, because we already know that the duration of this coffee logo here, this coffee logo has a duration of 83 frames, as you already know, right? 83 frames there. Well, then no matter what happens when you drag this over here, eventually it will loop back to the first state, the same frame, at frame 83, right? Wait a second, where is frame 83? Frame 83, where are you? There you go. So let's see, let's take a snapshot here. As you can see here, this is the ball right over here, right? So that's the ball. Take a snapshot and go to the first frame, and let's see if there's any difference. No, not at all, right? So there you go, Mike. What is important here is we know the duration, the length of the looping. So no matter how this layer is slide, still its duration of looping is 83 frames. No matter what happens there, the duration of the looping is still 83 frames. So I think whenever we calculate the LCM, it's still the same. It's still 60, this layer is 60 and this one is 83. So it's still the same 60 and 83, 60 and 83, which equals to 4,980 frames. Even though, as you can see already, this is slide back over here. It doesn't matter. So still, the end of the video is still the same as normally right here. So just lengthen this layer right there. And now when we play it back, it must loop back perfectly seamlessly as previous one. Just to illustrate the point. For example here. There you go. Let's play it back and see here whether it's glitchy or not. Play it back. Just focus here, Mike. See that? It's not glitchy. Once more. Just focus on the comp panel. Do not take your eyes off it. There you go. It's doing a perfect seamless loop there. So there you have it, Mike. Yeah, I think it's already too long-winded, but I cannot stress this enough. So yeah, once again I have to explain. When you have multiple objects, multiple elements, multiple animated motions, animated objects, how do you find the duration of the final video? By using the LCM principle, right? So there you go. The first step, let me write this for you. I think I'm going to write it on the process tree checklist too, so that it's become clear. So the first step is finding the duration, loop duration. First step is finding the loop duration, all right? And the second step, let's just disable this logo. Oh, where are you? There you go. And then, the second step is find the LCM. Third step, input the LCM into the comp duration. So there you go. And when you're using the loop out expression, as I've already explained before, you have to not adhere to the second principle. These all will be written on the process tree checklist, so don't worry about it. So there you go, Mike. You have to find the LCM. That's the most important thing, okay? Because I think it's rather simple. You don't have to write some complicated expression. It's not necessary, because you just plug in the loop out and then you just plug in the LCM value on the composition setting. It's very simple. So yeah, I think it's simple. Well, I think that's it for now, Mike. Sorry for being too long-winded. And after this, in the next video, I'm going to tackle about the color problem that you have asked me. Okay, thank you very much, Mike.